Story 1. This happened at the beautiful rural spot of Mount Pisgah/Lake Willoughby in Vermont. The area had a rich history and was known for its Indian lore. One legend spoke of an enormous cave deep beneath Lake Willoughby, shrouded in darkness. It was believed that an underground tunnel connected this cave to other lakes in the area. No one knew what dwelled within this mysterious cave, and the thought of it spooked me. I suffered from thalassophobia, the fear of deep water, yet I loved swimming. Whenever I visited this place, I felt an unexplainable presence. The beauty of nature clashed with an eerie feeling that something else lurked in the shadows. I wouldn't be surprised if those mountains held hidden cave systems. Strange and spooky events were known to occur at Lake Willoughby. Now, let me recount my story. It was May of 2016 when I decided to spend a day with my aunt, whom I affectionately called Auntie. After some relaxing and cleaning at her house, she suggested we go on a hike to get away from it all. It was a clear and pleasant day, perfect for a hike. Excitedly, we packed our bags with drinks and snacks and hopped into the car. To my surprise, my aunt had brought her 9mm gun. She double-checked its safety, assuring me that it was for protection in case we encountered any dangerous animals, like bears or cougars. Our destination was the south side of Lake Willoughby, my personal favorite site for hiking. We embarked on the trek up Mount Pisgah, immersing ourselves in the breathtaking scenery and the serenity that enveloped us. The stress of daily life melted away, replaced by a sense of peace. As we climbed higher, we reached the lookout point, a large rock jutting out from the mountainside. The view from there was awe-inspiring. You could see the entire lake, and the height was enough to make you realize the danger of a fall. I sat on the lookout, soaking in the beauty, while Auntie took pictures of the surroundings. After a few minutes, we turned to continue our hike. But as we did, we were startled by the sight of a dog standing silently in the middle of the trail. It wore a pack on its back, and we wondered where it had come from. Before we could ponder it further, we heard a voice nearby. An older gentleman appeared, waving and smiling at us. We exchanged greetings, and he mentioned how much his dog loved scratches and pets. I played with the pup for a while, and Auntie struck up a conversation with the man. He warned us about their recent encounter with something in the foliage while they were hiking on the other side of the mountain. He suspected it might have followed them. With a gesture, he revealed a black bear that had pursued them until they lost sight of it. Grateful for the warning, we showed him the gun we had brought along. He nodded in approval, and we continued our hike with a heightened awareness of our surroundings. As we ventured deeper into the woods, strange occurrences began to unfold. First, we heard rustling from behind a tree up ahead. Auntie, always vigilant, stopped abruptly, her hand on the holster. We both focused on the source of the sound, only to be greeted by the sight of a red squirrel. Auntie relaxed, releasing her grip on the holster, and I jokingly warned her that squirrels could smell fear. We shared a laugh before continuing our hike. The further we climbed, the more the landscape transformed. Thick vegetation gave way to ditches. Ever since that harrowing experience on Mount Pisgah, my perspective on the area had changed. I still love visiting Lake Willoughby, but now I approached it with a newfound respect and caution. The beauty of nature no longer overshadowed the underlying sense of mystery and danger that lurked in the shadows. Over the years, I delved deeper into the lore surrounding the area. I became fascinated by the stories of underground tunnels and hidden caves that supposedly connected different lakes in the region. The idea that there could be unknown creatures dwelling in the depths of Lake Willoughby sent chills down my spine. It was a haunting thought that stayed with me every time I set foot near the water. As time went by, I couldn't resist the allure of returning to Mount Pisgah and Lake Willoughby. The haunting memories only fueled my curiosity. In the summer of 2021, I decided it was time to confront my fears and embark on another hiking adventure in the area. This time, I invited a group of friends to join me. I thought that safety in numbers would provide some comfort, although deep down, I knew that no amount of companionship could erase the lingering unease I felt. We arrived at Lake Willoughby with excitement and trepidation. The familiar sight of the majestic mountains and the shimmering waters stirred conflicting emotions within me. The legends and lore whispered in my mind, reminding me of the mysteries that awaited. Setting off on the hike, we chose a different trail that led us to the northern side of the lake. The path wound through dense forest, where sunlight struggled to penetrate the thick foliage. It felt as if we were entering another realm, a realm where the ordinary rules of nature didn't quite apply. The air was heavy with anticipation as we ascended the trail, occasionally catching glimpses of the vast expanse of Lake Willoughby through breaks in the trees. The further we went, the more the surroundings seemed to close in on us, amplifying the eerie atmosphere. As we reached a clearing, a sense of foreboding washed over us. The tranquility of the lake seemed tainted, as if some unseen presence lingered just beyond our sight. We exchanged nervous glances, sensing that we were not alone. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the clearing, rustling leaves and causing our hair to stand on end. It felt as if the very fabric of the place was alive, whispering secrets we couldn't comprehend. A ley line, set to run through Lake Willoughby, seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. Pushing aside our unease, we pressed on, determined to uncover the mysteries that awaited us. The trail grew steeper, and our breath became labored as we climbed higher. We stopped intermittently to catch our breath, the silence broken only by the distant call of a bird or the rustling of unseen creatures in the underbrush. As we continued our ascent, the landscape transformed once again. Towering cliffs and jagged rocks appeared, creating an almost surreal backdrop. The sheer grandeur of the surroundings left us in awe, yet an underlying sense of danger persisted. It was during one of these breaks, as we marveled at the breathtaking view, that we heard a low, guttural growl emanating from somewhere nearby. The blood in our veins turned to ice as we locked eyes, fear etched on each of our faces. Without a word, we instinctively moved closer together, forming a protective circle. Our eyes darted around, desperately trying to locate the source of the growl. The tension in the air was palpable, the unknown lurking just beyond the veil of our perception. Then, from the depths of the forest, a pair of glowing eyes emerged. They burned with an otherworldly intensity, fixated on our group. Slowly, a shadowy figure materialized, revealing itself to be a massive black bear. Fear gripped us, but we remembered the warnings from the man we had met years ago. We stood our ground, cautious yet determined not to provoke the creature. As the bear moved closer, our hearts pounded in our chests. Time seemed to slow down, each second stretching into an eternity. But then, to our surprise, the bear simply turned away and vanished back into the forest, leaving us in stunned silence. It was as if the creature had sensed our respect for its domain and decided to spare us. We were left humbled, realizing that in the face of nature's might, we were mere visitors. As we made our way back down the mountain, a mix of relief and awe washed over us. Our hike had taken us to the edge of the unknown, confronting our fears and challenging our perceptions. Mount Pisgah and Lake Willoughby had revealed glimpses of their enigmatic nature, leaving us with a profound sense of wonder and reverence. To this day, I carry the memories of those experiences with me. The creepy encounters and the haunting beauty of the area continue to inspire a sense of adventure and respect for the mysteries that lie hidden in the world around us. Story 2. Every 4th of July when I was a kid, my dad would take me, my uncle Ralph, and my little brother Jacob to Big Bear Lake in California. It was a beautiful place with a snow-fed reservoir and picturesque surroundings. We would camp at one of the designated campgrounds and enjoy the day with other campers, watching fireworks as the sun went down. Those camping trips were the highlight of my summers. But one year, on the 4th of July in the early 90s, everything changed. Jacob disappeared without a trace. We had been playing with other kids while our dads were setting up the grill. I remember Jacob running off to find a hiding spot, but he never came back. We searched everywhere, asked other kids and adults, and eventually called the police. The campground turned into a makeshift headquarters with cops and forest rangers questioning everyone. As the search continued, hope started fading. My family began to fall apart. My dad turned to alcohol, and my mom blamed him for Jacob's disappearance. It was a devastating time for all of us. 2 weeks of search and rescue operations yielded no results. Jacob was declared legally deceased, and life moved on, but the questions remained. Years later, I started digging into the case myself. One witness mentioned seeing someone with a yellow cloth over their shoulder, similar to what Jacob was wearing that day. But the police didn't take it seriously. The official theory was that Jacob wandered off and was taken by an animal. But this witness's account didn't fit that narrative. The witness described the figure as abnormally tall and noticed something horribly wrong with its face. It sent chills down my spine. I realized I had to reevaluate everything I thought I knew about Jacob's disappearance. I couldn't rely on the official version anymore. After years of contemplating, I decided to take matters into my own hands and investigate. I made a trip to Big Bear Lake where it all happened. Emotionally, it was a challenging journey. I hiked around the area, hoping to find any clues. It was cathartic, but I wasn't any closer to the truth. As my week in Big Bear came to an end, I was ready to accept that I might never find answers. But fate had other plans. While walking in the woods, I tripped and fell. When I looked back, I discovered something at the base of a rocky shelf. It was an old, weathered backpack partially buried. My heart skipped a beat as I knelt down and carefully cleared away the dirt and debris. It was covered in moss and faded from years of exposure to the elements. But there was something oddly familiar about it. With trembling hands, I unzipped the backpack and peered inside. It was like stepping into a time capsule. The contents had remained untouched for over 2 decades. I pulled out a crumpled notebook, a worn-out flashlight, and a tattered map. But what caught my attention the most was a yellow t-shirt. The same canary yellow that Jake had been wearing on that fateful day. A mix of emotions flooded over me. Grief, hope, and a deep sense of unease. I couldn't help but wonder how this backpack, Jake's backpack, ended up here hidden away in the wilderness. It was as if it had been deliberately concealed, out of sight and out of reach. My mind raced with questions. Did Jake drop it while he was being taken? Or did someone purposely leave it behind as a clue? I couldn't ignore the eerie coincidence of finding the backpack so close to where he vanished. It felt like a breadcrumb left behind for me to follow. Determined to uncover the truth, I decided to continue my search. I followed the map, marked with faded trails and cryptic symbols, leading me deeper into the forest. Each step felt heavier than the last, anticipation mingling with dread. As I delved deeper into the wilderness, the surroundings grew more ominous. The trees loomed overhead, casting elongated shadows that seemed to whisper ancient secrets. The air turned colder, and a sense of foreboding settled upon me like a heavy shroud. Then, in a clearing, I stumbled upon a dilapidated cabin. Its windows were shattered, and the door hung precariously from its hinges. The eerie silence enveloped me as I cautiously entered the decaying structure. The floor creaked beneath my weight, echoing through the desolate space. Inside, I found remnants of a forgotten life, a rusty bed frame, broken furniture, and decaying photographs scattered across the floor. But what caught my attention was a journal, lying open on a wooden table. Its pages were filled with disjointed ramblings and sketches, each one more disturbing than the last. The entries spoke of a presence lurking in the woods, a malevolent entity that fed on fear and despair. The author described encounters with a figure, an abomination with an elongated frame, grotesque features, and eyes that pierced through the soul. It was a horrifying account that sent shivers down my spine. The final pages of the journal were filled with desperate pleas for help, a desperate attempt to expose the truth and warn others. It was signed with the name Jacob. A chill ran down my spine as I realized the significance of the name. My brother's name. Could it be that Jake had stumbled upon this cabin, encountered this malevolent force, and disappeared into its clutches? Fear mingled with determination as I knew I had to delve deeper into this mystery. The answers were within reach, hidden in the heart of the haunted woods. I would face the darkness head-on, for the sake of my brother and all those who had vanished without a trace. Armed with the journal and fueled by a newfound resolve, I ventured further into the depths of the forest. The path ahead was treacherous, but I was no longer alone. I carried the weight of the past, the hope of uncovering the truth, and the undying love for my lost brother. Little did I know that what awaited me would challenge my sanity, test my courage, and reveal a truth more horrifying than I could have ever imagined. The forest grew denser as I ventured deeper, the ancient trees entwining overhead like gnarled, skeletal fingers reaching towards the sky. The air became heavy with an otherworldly presence, a palpable darkness that seemed to seep into my very bones. Every step I took felt like a trespass into forbidden territory, but I couldn't turn back now. Following the map's cryptic markings, I arrived at a clearing bathed in an eerie, ethereal glow. In its center stood an ancient stone altar, moss-covered and weathered by time. Symbols, etched into its surface, pulsed with an otherworldly energy. It was clear that I had stumbled upon a place of great power, one intricately linked to the mysteries surrounding my brother's disappearance. Heart pounding, I carefully approached the altar, the weight of the journal in my backpack offering both comfort and trepidation. As I drew closer, a low, ominous hum filled the air, resonating within the depths of my being. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and a chill ran down my spine. With trembling hands, I placed the journal on the altar, offering it as a token of my intent to unravel the truth. A gust of wind rustled the pages, and the symbols on the stone surface began to glow with an intense, pulsating light. It felt as if the forest itself held its breath, waiting for what was to come. Suddenly, a piercing shriek pierced the silence, reverberating through the trees. I turned in horror to see a figure emerging from the shadows, its elongated frame swaying unnaturally with each step. The abomination described in the journal stood before me, its grotesque features contorted into a malevolent grin. Its piercing eyes locked onto mine, filled with a hunger that chilled me to my core. Summoning all the courage I had left, I refused to succumb to fear. I demanded answers. I demanded the return of my brother. In a voice that dripped with malice, the creature spoke, its words echoing in my mind like a haunting refrain. Your brother ventured too close to the truth, it hissed, its voice a blend of sinister whispers. He witnessed what mortals were never meant to see, and now he belongs to us. Rage and desperation surged through me, fueling my determination to save my brother and put an end to this ancient evil. With a primal scream, I lunged forward, determined to confront the abomination head-on. But just as I was about to reach it, a blinding light erupted from the altar, engulfing the creature and causing it to recoil in pain. The air crackled with energy, and the forest itself seemed to quake with the force of the confrontation. In that moment, I realized that the power within the woods was not solely malevolent. It possessed a glimmer of hope, a force fighting against the darkness. As the light intensified, a figure materialized beside me, radiant and ethereal. It was Jake, my brother, his form shimmering with a newfound strength. He reached out a hand, his touch warm and familiar, and together we faced the abomination. With a burst of energy, we unleashed a torrent of light and love, overpowering the creature that had held Jake captive for so long. It shrieked in agony, its form dissipating into nothingness, as if it had never existed. Breathing heavily, we stood in the clearing, the forest returning to an eerie calm. The ancient power that had been corrupted had been purified, and the woods felt rejuvenated, as if a weight had been lifted. Jake and I embraced, tears streaming down our faces, finally reunited after years of anguish and uncertainty. The journey had been treacherous, and the horrors we faced were etched into our souls, but we had emerged victorious, stronger than ever before. As we made our way back through the forest, hand in hand, we knew that the darkness had been banished, but the memory of our harrowing adventure would forever be etched in our hearts, a reminder of the strength and resilience that lies within us all. And so, we returned to the world, forever changed but with a renewed sense of purpose. Together, we would face whatever challenges awaited us, knowing that the bond of family and the power of love could conquer even the darkest of forces. Story 3. Once upon a time in June of 1969, 6-year-old Dennis Martin went missing in the Great Smoky Mountains. The eerie similarities between Dennis' disappearance and my brother Jake's disappearance have always haunted me. I believe there is a connection, however small, between the two incidents. In fact, I have been working on a theory that suggests a wider network of disappearances in the US, national parks of which Jake may be a part. After sending my original email in 2018, I continued to gather more information. What I discovered was both terrifying and unsettling. One aspect that caught my attention was the sudden disappearance of a park ranger named Mike Garza. I had asked him to investigate an undiscovered cave system near Big Bear Lake. However, not only did he never get back to me, but he also quit the National Park Service without leaving any contact details. I had a hunch that Mike's departure was somehow related to my brother's disappearance. With the help of current and former park rangers, I managed to find someone who had worked closely with Mike. I learned that Mike had mentioned having a brother in a small farming community called Maxwell in Northern California. With no contact information, I decided to make a trip to Maxwell from my current home in Eugene, Oregon. As I arrived in Maxwell, the flat and open farming land gave me a vulnerable feeling, quite different from the hills and mountains I was accustomed to. I spotted a local bar called the Foxhole and thought it would be a good place to start gathering information. I struck up a conversation with the friendly bartender, subtly mentioning Mike Garza and his brother in Maxwell. To my surprise, the bartender froze upon hearing the name Garza. He revealed that Mike had passed away just over a year ago. I felt a mix of sadness, disappointment, and shame. The bartender explained that Mike's death was complicated, and his brother Gabe had a lot to say about it. Intrigued, I decided to meet Gabe personally. The next night, I returned to the Foxhole, where Gabe was often found. I introduced myself as a high school friend of Mike's and expressed my condolences. Gabe initially thanked me and accepted my offer to buy him a beer. As the conversation progressed and we had a few drinks, I mentioned my doubts about Mike's suicide. Gabe's response was shocking. He vehemently declared that Mike was murdered, not a suicide. He explained that the local paper, along with the police and coroner, conspired to cover up the truth. According to Gabe, the initial medical examiner's report indicated signs of murder, but a new examiner dismissed it as suicide, citing depression as a factor. Gabe's account painted a picture of incompetence and a potential conspiracy involving the medical examiner. It was clear that Gabe had shared this story numerous times over the past year. His claims resonated with me, but I had to be cautious. I knew I had to gather more information before drawing any conclusions. After a long and emotionally draining day, I returned to my motel in Williams, California for some rest. However, the night brought nightmares, filled with fear and helplessness. The next morning, I decided to visit Mike's grave in Maxwell, hoping to find solace and pay my respects. While driving back to Oregon, something unsettling occurred. A black Ford F-150 began tailing me, getting increasingly closer. I initially brushed it off as a coincidence or an irritable driver, but the timing felt too peculiar. I couldn't help but think it was related to my conversation with Gabe. Although I couldn't prove it, my gut feeling told me there was a connection. Despite these unsettling encounters, I managed to tape a conversation with Gabe. I continued my journey back to Oregon, my mind filled with the disturbing revelations I had uncovered in Maxwell. The encounter with Gabe Garza had shaken me to the core, and I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something much darker and more sinister at play in my brother's disappearance. Once I reached Eugene, I couldn't help but feel a sense of urgency to dig deeper into Mike's death and its potential connection to Dennis Martin's disappearance. I spent countless hours poring over every piece of information I had gathered, analyzing the details, and trying to find any possible leads or patterns. One particular detail that stood out to me was the abrupt departure of the park ranger, Mike Garza, after I had contacted him about the cave system near Big Bear Lake. It seemed too coincidental that he vanished without a trace right after our conversation. I delved deeper into his background, reaching out to former colleagues and acquaintances in the National Park Service. Through my relentless pursuit of answers, I managed to track down a retired park ranger who had worked closely with Mike. He agreed to meet with me, intrigued by my persistence and determination to uncover the truth. We sat down in a quiet cafe, and he began to share his recollections of Mike and the strange circumstances surrounding his disappearance. According to the retired ranger, Mike had always been a diligent and dedicated park ranger, known for his passion for exploring and discovering hidden natural wonders. He was respected by his colleagues and had a reputation for being thorough in his investigations. However, something changed after Mike started delving into the cave system I had mentioned. The retired ranger revealed that Mike became increasingly obsessed with the caves, spending long hours researching their history and possible connections to other disappearances. He grew distant from his colleagues, consumed by a deep-seated paranoia that he was being watched and followed. The more he uncovered, the more he believed there was a dark network operating within the national parks. One day, without any warning, Mike announced his resignation and vanished from the park service. The retired ranger tried to reach out to him, but all his attempts to make contact went unanswered. It was as if Mike had completely cut ties with his previous life, disappearing into thin air. As I listened to the retired ranger's account, a chill ran down my spine. It seemed like Mike had stumbled upon something so sinister that it had driven him to the edge. The retired ranger's testimony only fueled my determination to uncover the truth and bring justice to my brother and the countless others who had vanished under similar circumstances. Armed with this new information, I decided to take a different approach. Instead of relying solely on my own investigations, I sought out the assistance of seasoned private investigators who specialized in missing persons cases. I shared all the details I had gathered, including the potential link between Dennis Martin's disappearance and the dark network Mike had been investigating. Together, we embarked on a comprehensive investigation, reaching out to families of other missing persons who had vanished in national parks. Our efforts garnered attention from the media and sparked public interest in these unsolved cases. Families who had long been silenced by grief and frustration found solace in the knowledge that their loved ones' stories were finally being heard. It was a bittersweet victory, knowing that we were shining a light on these dark secrets, but still haunted by the fact that we were dealing with an elusive and dangerous adversary. As time went on, more witnesses came forward with their own accounts of strange occurrences and suspicious activities within national parks. The evidence we gathered pointed to a web of corruption, cover-ups, and possible involvement of influential individuals. It became clear that we were up against a powerful and well-organized network that would stop at nothing to protect its secrets. But we refused to back down. We used every resource at our disposal to expose the truth and put an end to the reign of terror that had plagued the national parks for far too long. Our investigation became a beacon of hope for the families affected by these tragedies, and we received support from individuals and organizations who believed in our cause. In the end, our efforts paid off. The exposure of the dark network within the national parks led to a series of arrests and the unearthing of long-buried secrets. Justice was finally served, providing closure to the families who had spent years searching for answers. While the battle against darkness is never truly over, we have made a significant impact and shed light on a hidden world that had preyed on the innocent for decades. It was a victory that honored the memories of those who had been lost and brought a sense of peace to their grieving loved ones. As for my brother Jake, his case remains unsolved. However, the uncovering of the network and the subsequent arrests provided a glimmer of hope that one day we might find the truth about his disappearance as well. I remain committed to seeking answers and will continue to fight for justice, never forgetting the lessons learned from my journey into the heart of darkness that lurked within the national parks.